Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar where we're going to be talking about transformative leadership. My name is Benjamin Schurz, and I am here with Hill for Literacy, where we are a consultancy that works with schools, state education departments, school district, and school-based leaders and teachers to implement evidence-based instructional practices. And I am delighted to introduce two of my friends and colleagues today, Dr. Terrie Noland and Dr. Nell Thompson. And Nell is the founder of the Big Sky Literacy Summit, which you may have heard of, that is in Montana every year, and also the Transformative Reading Teacher Group. Nell and Terrie work together as leadership and instructional coaches who transform schools across the country. I am personally looking forward to what they have to say today and hearing their wisdom, and I hope all of you enjoy today's presentation. We will be sending out a recording to anybody that registered today, and if you're attending, a little bit of housekeeping. We have a Q&A feature, so if you have any questions during today's presentation, please submit them, and we will have time for Terrie and Nell to answer them at the end of their presentation. So with that, enjoy the show. Terrie and Nell, take it away.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks so much for having us, Hill for Literacy. Danielle and I are thrilled to be here today to talk about one of the things that we love most, which is around leadership. We truly believe that it's going to take our leaders in our schools and in our districts to advance literacy. And one of the things that we know so essential is that leadership is not about where you sit or the title that you have. It is about the person inside. Teachers are leaders, and also the individuals that are principals, administrators within a school district, they are leaders as well. And so today we're going to be talking about this converging and this merging between our teachers and our leaders, because it's going to take that to get us to this literacy impact. So Danielle, anything to add there?
When we created this title, I should say, I just think it's brilliant, because I think that ultimately all of us on this call today or listening to it later, we work within systems, and sometimes we don't realize that there are two directions at play. And so I'm really excited to talk about that.
And one of the ways that we think about this is we call it the air game and the ground game. That's that fun imagery that helps us to remember what we're talking about here. Is the larger sustainable impact has to come from the air game. These are the individuals that are in those roles and positions that have oversight over the entire system, as well as the ground game. Teachers sitting in front of students, parents with their children in homes. Like, it takes everyone in this converging and coming together. So we'll be talking about the air game and the ground game.
Now, when we think about the two systems that are coming together in this one unified system to ensure that we maximize the potential within the system, we are talking about exactly what Terrie just noted, the air game. Those that have roles that oftentimes for us as teachers, I know I was a teacher, I was a speech language pathologist, that I was on the ground. I was doing boots in the trenches, just like where I was today in inner city Atlanta. I don't always see the air game, but the air game are those people that are in the district positions, and they are typically looking at things from farther away. They're in much larger increments. They're trying to see change in gross levels. Like, that means like a long distance, like from the beginning to the end of the year. Like, are the systems we're employing changing the lives of our teachers and our students, and therefore our communities? Now, the next layer are our folks in the middle. Now, these are the school leaders, okay? School leaders are somewhere between the air game and the ground game. And this is an important space to be. And I work with so many school leaders in this work. And oftentimes knowing that change is doable means that you have to be connected to the reality of what our teachers are doing. And you have to understand what the asks are from the air game. Okay, so you have to be able to integrate and be flexible and know your context and your teacher, student systems, and the community you're within. So this requires a lot of patience and discipline to be communicating between the two, knowing the vision, the expectations, and the results. And then the last piece of this is the ground game. This is where teachers are living most of the time. And Terrie and I, when we work in state level rollouts and in district level rollouts, we always request that the air game players and the ground game players are at the table together, because teachers are observing quick change. District leaders are looking at big, large increments of change, but teachers are in that moment and they're very urgent, and they know that learning an alphabet letter or changing a child's life from being a selective mute, per se, if you're in special education and speech language like I was, I know there's something going on, and my daily instruction is going to change the life of a child. So that urgency is very much about the student in front of you, and it is very personal. Okay, this must take patience, and you have to be urgent, and you have to be tuned to your ecosystem and context in the ground game. So this interweaving, I think there's one more motion to this slide, is a constant integrative process. We're listening and learning and reflective. And as we do this work, we learn more and more. This whole process of integrating communication is about collective effect. That means that we're all talking to each other at every level, often. And we're all accountable to the students we serve. Now, that kind of collective effect is what changes lives. And so really being tuned into the one system, but the two directions, that's what we're talking about. And really understanding what those directions are. There are ideas coming up from the ground and innovation, and there are ideas and innovation coming from the top, and we're all coming together to innovate. All right, Terrie.
Yeah, and one thing that we are now requesting, not at the beginning of school transformation projects years ago, but we are now requesting, when we work with schools and districts, that we have individuals from each of these roles at the table, because we've been in situations before where the teachers were not at the table, and then we said, no, next meeting, guess what? The teachers are at the table. They have to be at the table for this collective effect and for this circuitous discussion and conversation to begin to unfold. It has to happen. And when we start to think about that big transformation, that's what we are looking for. Now, I want to give us some more context here about the roles of our teacher leaders and systems leaders. So first, let's just look at teacher leaders. You have to see yourself not just as educators, but you are the frontline observer to anything that happens in the education system. You are that frontline observer. I know I have tutored children, and in tutoring children, I'm going to tell you what, I learn more than I ever could doing anything else, is sitting in front of a child, frontline, firsthand knowledge about what is going on with my instruction. And so if something is amiss, if something is off, if something doesn't seem to be going right, if the curriculum is not being responsive in what my students' needs are, I'm the one that has that knowledge, and I'm the one that has to voice that. So just as teacher leaders, system leaders should not just be managers. Our role as a systems leader, and I was a systems leader, shouldn't just be to manage the processes and manage behavioral issues and bus duties and things like that. We know that there is an effect for instructional leadership. We are the ones shaping the system. For so long, Danielle and I both have trained teachers. and we have said that it's good. A trained and well-educated and knowledgeable teacher is going to change the life of a child, many children. But a trained and knowledgeable and well-educated system leader is the one that can pull the levers of change on schedules, on curricular choices, supplemental tools, protocols. They're the ones that change systems. So we have to begin to see ourselves different. When teachers speak, you are translating what the big air game cannot see, because especially in large districts, superintendents, building leaders are not getting into every school, every classroom, every minute. It's not possible. So that's why we try to lift our educators to find their voice, not as a way to complain about things that are happening, but as a way to state facts about what is happening so that change can occur.
Terrie,
yeah, go ahead.
That's a really great point, because we saw some pre-questions for this talk. And some of those questions were a lot about teachers speaking up and asking questions. And, some of them were about very specific things that they need in their classrooms. And oftentimes what we would encourage you to do is, are you asking those questions of the people that are within your air game? Do you know who the person is who can help you get the tool that you need to have in your room, or the training you need to have, or sometimes it's just a degree of separation. Who do you know that knows somebody who can help you get that answer? We do it every day when we're in schools, like trying to link people up with the next person who might know the answer to the question, but oftentimes it's within our air games.
Yeah, and sometimes we haven't wanted to find our voice, but here's a great personal leadership strategy: is think of it as don't complain. It's not complaining. You come with a problem and say, and here's what I'm thinking about. Here's a solution, or who do you know that I should talk to that can help me out? And really approach things in that manner. Same thing for system leaders. They're the ones, when we start to pay attention, we call this the law of proximity. So the law of proximity is all about staying close to the work, because I promise you, as a building and system leader, when you get into a classroom, whew, your mindset changes, because you can begin to see where the system is working and where it's not working. And then finally, teacher leaders, if you stay silent, all those things that you've uncovered, the bumps and the bruises along the way of getting and nailing your instructional routine, of the curriculum has it's got a little prickly point right here, or wow, it's smooth sailing right here. If you stay silent, nobody will ever know. And we do a lot of culture work in our systems change. And we know that when you stay silent, it begins to kind of swell up inside. And that's not what we want. System leaders, when leaders fail to see the bigger system, this is where misalignment happens. We are all about alignment. Alignment, coherence, cohesion is what makes our systems run so smoothly. So begin to see yourself, no matter your role on this webinar today, begin to see yourself as someone that needs to if I'm in the air game, come down and get into those classrooms. And if I'm the teacher leader, I need to raise up any issues or celebrations or successes. So one of the ways that, here's an example of one of the ways that we like to think about this. There is that thing that we have that kind of hangs over us around fidelity of implementation of any curricular tool or resource. And we have this, this little pundit square here. Along the bottom, we've got curriculum, whether you're using a new or an existing curriculum. And then along the left-hand side, you'll see your level of knowledge, whether it's high level or a low level of knowledge. And we don't see fidelity of implementation of any curricular tool or resource as a one and done. As leaders that are the air game leading the system, we might have to lead people differently. As teacher leaders, we might have to understand where we are as opposed to someone else in the building. So let's see how this plays out here. Let's say that in our system, we have high knowledge and a new curriculum. Well, guess what? The air game oversight of a high knowledge and a new curriculum, maybe it's not much. We call this freedom in the fences. Is maybe that fence isn't very, very wide or thick. I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway because you are so knowledgeable and skilled. Let's say you have high knowledge with an existing curriculum. I'll liken that to me as a tutor. I've used the same evidence-based tool for over 14 years. I know that tool. I know what's coming next. I know how my kids are going to respond. I know where we're going to stumble. I know where we're going to fly. And at this point of me using the tool, I could probably be a good mentor to other people. So the air game oversight in this situation is going to be different than in other situations. And the teacher leader lifting up where we are within this tool might be to say, I'm advancing my knowledge so much that now I'm understanding the need to integrate oral language more at depth. Here's a couple of other ones here. What if we have low teacher knowledge and a new curriculum? What if this is your first year teacher? They're brand new, day one in the classroom. Maybe I've had a little bit of training, maybe not, a little bit of understanding, a new curriculum. Oh my goodness, all these pages, all these tools, all these resources, online tools. Yeah, the oversight from the air game, those fences, you're not going to have much freedom in those fences. But it's not command, it's not do this. It is mentoring, it's coaching, it's guiding, it's leading. And then finally, low teacher knowledge and an existing curriculum. You know, sometimes in our situations, in our context, maybe we have this existing curriculum that works. Maybe it's a new teacher that's come into that tool. Or maybe it's a teacher that's kind of dug in their heels. We know that happens sometimes. So what do I do as a teacher leader in order to not dig in my heels, in order to lift myself up, personal leadership? What do I do as a leader to come in and provide parameters about how I'm going to guide and lead you to success within this tool? So this is just an example of how an air game and ground game can come together to truly drive success.
I love how you transitioned into the idea of thinking about the resistors, those that may be wanting to hang on to old practices or things that are comfortable, that are going to force change. And that, as a leader, we're going to kind of touch on in the next segment, where Terrie touched slightly on it in this one. It's that we start to consider the idea that there's a lot that has to happen for a resistor to want to transition into a new practice. And actually, Terrie, what do you like to call that? We don't get them to buy in. We get them to what?
We buoy them up. It's not about buy-in. You got to buy into the new tool. You got to buy into the new schedule. No. It is about we buoy each other up. You don't buy into the vision. You don't buy into the tool. You buy into the person because of how they treat you. They buoy you up.
And that takes a leader who's got a lot of courage around what your vision is. And you have to start having a lot of visibility to get buy-in. And we're calling it the buoy up effect, because that happens when you start making yourself very visible and you give yourself a voice, and you give the vision a voice, and you give the work a voice. And having that voice means that you're establishing a relationship that has opportunity goggles. You have started to see that, oh my gosh, this is possible. This is something we can do, because every day you show up and have visibility in the hallways, visibility in your classrooms, and you give voice to your vision, you start to build something that we know is trust and credibility. And if you're in that first like 6 to 8 months of your title, Terrie and I, Terrie said it at the beginning. This isn't about getting a document that says you're the principal or a superintendent. Leadership is nothing more than influence and relationship, and it truly depends on trust and credibility. And Terrie, go ahead and bring in the graphic, because what Terrie started talking about was something called freedom in the fences. And we learned this from a great superintendent in Burlington, Wisconsin, Jill. And what she said it so effortlessly one day in a leadership meeting about having freedom in the fences. And we're like, this is brilliant. And to be honest with you, it's easy to say it, but for those of you who are out there and you have resistors and you're trying to buoy people up, it's really hinges on trust and credibility and that positive, sustained experience that you're having. What freedom in the fences is all about is that ability where you really know something well, and you can have flexibility within the boundaries of what you're doing. Today, I was just watching some teachers who have a lot of freedom within their fences because they know their students so well. They know their curricular resource very well, and the two don't match up. So they have to have freedom to meet the needs of their children. Fidelity to the data, use of the tool as a resource, and knowledge of the teacher, which will always outpace your curriculum, gives that teacher that freedom. So high knowledge and a tool that's evidence-based, but it needs to be supplemented or tweaked to meet the needs of the students. Just watched it today. So the ground game and the air game have to have rich dialogues and collective teaming to understand when you can flex within those fences. Because sometimes, as we've learned, you need to have very tight boundaries of those fences in the beginning just to get the protocol, the routine, the systematicity in place. I think many of you can probably understand when you put in structured literacy. It's a very structured, systematic, sequential protocol to the code. Now, the more you do it, like Terrie said, she's been doing it for 14 years, she can almost expect what her students are going to look like on the other side of the Zoom call, because you get so into that routine that you can have a lot of freedom in your fences. But if you don't even know what's going to happen and what the common errors are and how your instruction lands with your students, you need a lot of practice with that. So you don't have a lot of freedom. You got to keep it within the boundaries of those fences. So now on the next slide, just two examples of freedom in the fences. In the school that I've been in today, first of all, I'm very proud that they made one of the top 10,000 schools that are getting reading instruction right. But it's profound to me that we have to work. We're working so hard with complex variables. And one of them is we differentiate our core, and we're doing language screening. So we've done both innovations. So we no longer call foundational skills just phonics and phonological development. The early ecosystem is oral language to phonological and phonics development. And those are deep innovations because the core curriculum doesn't have those things, but our students needed them. So we had to give ourselves some freedom in our fences because we're having fidelity to what we're asked to do, but the students need us to do more. So we differentiate by doing a walk to read model. And we also screen language and teach language early so we can help support the learning of the word reading skills. It's taken a lot of flexibility to get that right. And it's not within the protocols what are state mandated or district mandated, but our students are demanding it from us. Because when we were at 0% proficiency and in the bottom 5 of the state, you know what? Classic approaches just weren't meeting it for us. So we had to innovate, and we had to say, these are the fences we've been given, but these are the students we're serving. And we have to have a lot of hard conversations about what we're going to do to stay within it and keep it persistent enough to change lives.
And I think what's so profound about that concept, the true life story, this concept is, we hear over and over, many of us have maybe been in situations where I am in the air game and I don't truly know what's going on with the curricular tool. I just know, oh my goodness, now maybe we have some funds, we need to purchase something, and then a new thing happens. We never talk to the teachers never raised up their concerns, and that's where you get a lot of this friction happening. And so I know in your context in that school, I got to visit this school, and I'm going to tell you what, that building leader was everywhere. She was everywhere except her office. And it was just a truly profound thing to see in solving problems on the go. She knew those curricular tools and resources just like the teachers. And so this is what you can do when you come together. So we're moving now into our part two, which is about, okay, so what are some of these levers for change? There is this amazing report from McKinsey and Company called Spark and Sustain. We would encourage you to go grab that. You can just Google it. But they talk about some levers for change that are making an impact in schools, not just in this country, but around the world. So we're going to talk about a couple of these. So go ahead and kick us off here with this.
I think it's important to note that the McKinsey and Company report looked at 452 schools around the world, y'all. And United States, there's only 2 systems that made the list. And there are 7 things that these systems uniquely did that when the convergence of evidence, the statistics played out, there were 7 things they did. And when we put these 2 next bullets in, we're not giving you everything, but what we're telling you is that great systems are really values driven around innovation. Okay, that is like the big one. And I think what I've found in all my work in transforming schools and in state level work is that, do we value cognition and thinking over compliance, or do we value compliance? Innovation doesn't have a lot of space or breathing air in compliance cultures. Innovation has to exist in cultures where you feel safe to speak up with new ideas. The leaders will listen and your voice matters. That's how Adam Grant put it. And Terrie's going to drive this home with a little bit more on psychological safety.
So we have seen enough systems to know, we have been in enough systems to know that change, truly any change, it doesn't matter what the change is. Of course, our bias is literacy, language, leadership, but any change in any system depends on the strength of the culture. If the culture is strong, that trust, that credibility, the air game is present with the ground game. The ground game is speaking to the air game. If that is strong, the synergy is there. You know what I'm talking about, because many of us have been in situations like that. That is when change can happen and happen fast. It is when our systems are fragile with culture, that it doesn't matter if we have the next best thing that's out there. It doesn't matter if this new tool is proven and evidenced to change, just rapid pace. If the culture is fragile, if there's no psychological safety, then guess what? That pace of change is going to take a long time. So Amy Edmondson, in her work at Harvard, is the one that coined the term psychological safety. And basically, here's the gist of psychological safety. It says, leaders don't create learning by demanding change. That's control, you're going to do this, I'm going to tell you to do this thing. They create it by building the conditions that make learning safe. So in Amy's hypothesis, she was like, okay, so my hypothesis is that when you have a good team of individuals that feel safe and there's trust with one another, you're building your school, your grade level team, whatever it is, then you will make less mistakes. You won't fail as often. And she found the opposite in her research. Actually, what she found is the more that the teams trusted one another, they had this culture that was good and synergistic with one another, they failed more because they knew they could fail. They knew they could fail because they knew people would be there to pick them up, to buoy them up. It was a profound finding in her work. And so when you think about it in your context, are you willing to speak up? Are you willing to fail? How quick are you willing to fail and learn? Because I'm going to tell you what, I have failed in doing my curriculum. Danielle has failed in things that she has done. So this right here, as leaders, and you say to yourself, I'm a teacher leader, I don't get to determine culture. Nope. Everybody gets to determine culture. It's a huge lever.
And Terrie, that failure thing, let's just be honest. Failure's our greatest teacher. But if you're in a system where you feel like you're compliance driven and you can't fail, you might resist changing at all. So I encourage all you leaders out there to really think about if there are resistors or there are people that are really not doing the work at 110%. Are you open to letting them fail and fall on their face and have open conversations without firing them or getting mad at them? If you're not, then the problem lies in psychological safety and the willingness to say when we fail, we fail quick, we learn quick, and we keep going, because that's why good formative assessment should keep teaching us about what our practices are doing. And that's why failing quick and learning quick is the best path to getting more positive outcomes.
Yeah, and my goodness, what a beautiful example for our students. What a beautiful model to show our students and say, we're going to fail, we're going to mess up. Let's do it here together. So it's really a profound teaching when you really get to the heart of it. And you're the one that gets to make the change. Do you want to change the culture? Walk across the hallway and speak to somebody that you haven't spoken to. Go sit down with the principal, schedule that meeting. I know it's scary. I know it's hard, but this is what has to be done to build psychological safety. So the second thing that we have mentioned, but we're gonna teach this to you right now, is this idea of teaming. The collective effect of individuals coming together. So in the work from the National Implementation Research Network, NERN, many of you know about implementation science. Look at this statement at the top of this slide. Without an implementation team using clearly defined implementation methods, it takes 17 years to move 14% of an intended new initiative into routine practice. 17 years. How many of us are in that school, that role, that place in 17 years? How many children have we missed in 17 years? Our children don't have 17 years for us to wait for us to get it right. See, we don't want to just hope this happens and I'm a single teacher trying to get it done. We were in a training one day with leaders, a room full of leaders, 80 leaders in the room. And it was at the end, we've got this 6-day leadership course. And it was at the end that an individual raised her hand at the back of the room. And she said this profound statement. She said, what you've taught me is I can't do it by myself. Because she'd been trying to do literacy transformation by herself. She didn't have an implementation team. It was going to take her 17 years to even move 14%. But the NERN research tells us if we have an expert team, and if Amy Edmondson tells us we've got psychological safety within that team, we can move 80% of our sites in 3 years. Now that's change. That is moving literacy forward at the strength of culture. And so this is where when we say we don't work with schools or districts without the air game present and the ground game present around that round table, sitting and talking and having hard conversation.
So thank you, everyone. We're grateful for your time. And if you have some questions, I know that Ben and Marcy Kate might have some for us. Well, What we know is that leadership is, I really think, the next greatest innovation in this work. If you've been working with the science of reading and moving work forward and understanding that there's really one system with two directions to it and how it needs to communicate and how much you need to know about this work if you're in the air game and in the ground game to get it done requires a lot of leadership from everybody. So everybody's a leader.
Terrie and Nell, thank you so much for sharing all that you said. There's a couple things, so we got some questions that I want to ask, but there's a couple things that you shared that I just want to elevate. There's actually kind of 10 main ones. I'm going to choose the ones that I think really resonated with me and might resonate with the audience. Just starting right at the beginning with that top-down, bottom-up approach, the air game and the ground game, and thinking about that as a way that we can all use as a framework moving forward wherever we are in our organizations, in our schools, in our districts, in our state, government, or wherever we are playing the game, that there is somebody we can reach out to that will help us achieve our goals and amplify, that we can't do it alone, right? You ended with the teaming, the teaming concept, and how, it reminds me of this quote, I don't know who to attribute it to. It's kind of become just in the ether, but if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I believe that when we team, we can go far fast. And I think that's what you're talking about. And in between there, you talked about freedom around the fences as that way that we can support, rather than being rigid with our expectations and fidelity checklists, right? Let's support people to become the leaders really, and live into their strengths. And I love that concept of leadership is really influence and relationship together. It's not about what title you hold. It's not about the position you're in. It's really about those two things coming together. So thank you so much for kind of opening that up and opening that discussion up. One of the things that I'm curious about is when you do this work and you're working with people at different levels that are playing the different games, how do we help teachers see themselves as system leaders, not just leaders in their own classroom?
I think both of us probably have a nugget to add here. It's my greatest joy to see a teacher in their brilliance. And I think that our greatest job as coaches and leaders is to truly celebrate that and say, look at how you are leading yourself to lead this ecosystem. Because we don't use the word lead very often with a teacher, to be honest. I think that if we just start to use that word as a principal, as a superintendent, as a curriculum instruction director, or as a teacher complimenting another teacher, saying, way to lead that. That was a great meeting. Way to lead that data discussion. You just nailed it. I loved you talking about that data. Way to lead that first grade session on oral language. I've never seen such a thing. But just using the word lead will change the dialogue, because teachers are leading every day. It takes leadership to choose to show up every day, let alone manage an ecosystem of 5-year-olds all day long for a kindergarten teacher. So I think we need to commend that and celebrate it, and everybody needs a compliment. Everybody deserves to be celebrated for that leadership.
And I'll add to it as well. One of the talks that we have done often and did a lot last summer, in fact, on kind of a speaking tour around the country, was teachers as implementation scientists. And I love that term. I love giving teachers this new title and this new term that says, you're the implementation scientist. Because who else is? No, it's not the principal that's the implementation scientist that's there every day with my hands on card decks and flipping pages, and it is my hands, just as a scientist in a lab is the one that has their hands on those beakers and Bunsen burners and all of those things. Teachers are the ones that know without a doubt where their children are, how their children are performing. And so just like giving the compliments of you're a leader, also teachers need to see themselves as the individuals that have that knowledge. And I love that phrase. If they don't speak up, then they will never be able to translate what the big system can't see, because the big system can't see what they see.
I love that. So good. It kind of creates the space and also kind of elevates, right? I mean, teachers are doing the important work every day. And we're all making decisions throughout the day, right? Teachers, leaders at the air game, at the ground game, in between. And one of the things, that I hear principals say often, or building leaders, like, you never know what's going to hit you when you come in the building, right? And that something's going to surprise us every day. And so when we think about the leaders and the people that are playing the air game or kind of in between, and a lot of times we're making decisions to solve problems that are coming up in the moment. But what about making a shift? Like, how do we make that shift from solving problems in the moment to really making decisions about building a system, right, that will create that environment that you were talking about, where the system really prevents those problems from appearing in the first place?
Well, that takes us into a whole nother talk that we're obsessed with lately, which is developing your systems thinking. Peter Senge, the fifth discipline, Donella Meadows, MIT on systems thinking. Ultimately, in this field, I think if we're going to truly understand how the air game and the ground game work together, we have to become systems thinkers. And Terrie and I didn't go down that road necessarily because it's a deep talk. Systems thinking has this really incredible opportunity within it because, Terrie and I start out our talk with thinking about, we both grew up on farms, ranches in rural America, and rain changed our lives. Rain, the sign of rain, the smell of rain, the wetness of rain changed the attitude of our fathers. It's a system. Why? The ecosystem is directly linked to farmers' success. And it's interesting that the tone of a school, the joy in a school, the relationships in a school are directly connected to the success of children and their systems. Those are all systems, human systems, and that classroom to that school, to that district, to that state are all systems that are interconnected. And so just like we cannot take rain away from the process of growing crops on a farm, we can't take love away from growing children in a school. And the more we understand how much love and how much relationship and how much care goes into this work, it's really complex. And how much, I think the other nugget is really important. And when compliance becomes the medium, we forget how much cognition and thinking and knowledge has to go into this work. It's a very deep thinking profession, and leadership requires that of us. So to create better systems, then we ultimately have to really dig into becoming better thinkers.
Terrie, anything to add?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's such a good talk. We talk about systems intelligence, systems ignorance. We love that talk. But in conjunction and being, the only way you get to be a better systems thinker is to get in classrooms, is to see the system right up close, at hand, to see how the scheduling, the calendar affects my curricular tool, all of the things, how they're so connected. Get in the classrooms. And we call this the law of visibility. So as a leader, what do I need to do to solve problems? Be visible. We have this list of leadership principles to go by, laws to go by, the law of visibility. You have to be present. I have led a preschool building. I know what it takes to be present, to solve problems that never became emails, that I would spend 2 hours every morning before being in my office, and I would walk around to every single classroom, solve the problem, take care of it, that never became anything bigger. And, I learned that from my father of what it was like to lead. And so we need examples of what it takes to do this big, heavy work. In education, we're called to a higher purpose. It's truly I truly believe that we are called to something big and great, to care for the lives of children.
It reminds me of a quote that I'm going to get a little bit wrong, but Keith Ferrazzi, who's like a big um, leadership consultant and works with lots of companies, and he said something like, "You can't think your way to improving your action. You need to act you need to act in order to improve your thinking." And so that being visible, the idea of being around, you need to really get in there and be visible, know what's going on. And by taking that action, you're going to see new things. You're going to understand things differently. You're going to have different conversations. You're going to be open. And that is really what will shift the thinking, which, as you mentioned, will lead to that way of shifting our systems more effectively. All right. Well, I'm gonna go do one more question. And that is, if you could change one leadership behavior and one instructional behavior that would most accelerate literacy outcomes, what would it be and why?
Go ahead, Terrie.
My answer is it's one and the same, both instructional behavior, leadership behavior, and that is commit yourself to personal growth. Commit yourself. Don't just say, "Oh, I've got to get, whatever, 15 hours, 20 hours this year to renew my certification for this thing or that thing." Commit yourself to personal growth. Seek it, desire it, long for it, like thirst for personal growth, because it's in that personal growth journey that you just are opened up to so much development, to receiving of so much good information, whether it be both of us. We commit to this not only in literacy and language development, we commit to it in personal growth and development. So we're always sharing podcasts back together. And did you see that? Did you listen to that? Did you read that book? And I guess maybe that's the thing too, is make sure you do that collectively with somebody, with a team, because boy, I'm going to tell you what, your thinking gets clearer and better and stronger when you commit to that growth and then you share that growth with other. There are, to be a better leader, this helps me to be a better teacher with my instructional practices. I get better.
Goodness, I'm going to go visionary. I think that if there were one thing that we could do as leaders and instructional boots on the ground folks, is if we start to think about the integration of what we do, because they all relate back to one system called the language brain. And teaching instruction at phonemic awareness to phonics, to vocabulary, to fluency, to comprehension, in the format that the NRP National Reading Panel proposed to us in 2000, has been a consistent, persistent pedagogical experience, and in isolation, it was never meant to be. Those are 5 pillars of language. They're 5 pillars that need to be integrated. And I think the great leadership move and the instructional move of the future is that we understand how to integrate them, and we understand what that looks like across the day, not just in these components taught at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And we don't just have check boxes that check that, but we check because our students are integrating knowledge and have oral and written output that is exponentially beyond what just a siloed approach would have. So integration in both, that would be profound.
All right. Well, we heard it here. And, I can't leave without just saying how great it was to see both of you recently. We hosted the Literacy Summit during Sundance, and it was amazing seeing you active on the panels in person with all the other people there, talking about research, talking about neuroscience, talking about AI technology. And it resonates with what you were both just talking about, that it's really about integration and breaking down silos. I mean, that was really our theme, is that in order to make progress, we can't do things in silos. They don't exist separately. And we don't learn those elements of language or literacy separately. They all have an impact on each other and are integrated. And so, of course, it was great to see both of you in person, and how lucky that we get to be together again so quickly. It was really fun. So anything that either of you want to share after that, beyond that? Any last thoughts?
Well, Ben, I think your putting together of this very first Literacy Summit at the Sundance Film Festival is truly this air game, ground game moment. It is truly a moment of bringing together, industries that normally don't come together. The film industry, the public health industry, the education industry coming together, where we've got, here we are, in that sense, we're the ground game. In that sense, we are on the front line observers of what illiteracy does in our country. And then we brought, your thinking that brought all of these individuals together, that put us in a room together. That is where the synergy, the magic, and the evolution of big thinking starts to take place. And we saw it firsthand. You told me things are coming out of it. So yeah. Prime example.
Really exciting. We all got to have some personal growth, didn't we?
We did. And we would love to see you come to the Big Sky Literacy Summit. You're welcome to come and hang out with us there too, and keep growing this work.
Let's do it. This is where it happens. It's very exciting. Thanks so much. And thanks for coming on our webinar, right? I can't wait to share it with people, and keep the conversation going around language, around leadership, around growth, air game, ground game. I'm just so excited. So thank you both so much.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
All right. Well, today's webinar, right, focused on leadership and transformation. We will be hosting our next webinar next month with Deb Reed, who is a researcher on literacy from Tennessee, University of Tennessee, where she's going to be talking about statewide teacher training initiatives. And do they really help kids read? Spoiler alert. Yes, they do. And we've got the data she's going to share the data that demonstrates that. And if you want any information about Hill for Literacy, the work we do, the way we can support you in schools as leaders, as teachers, as systems thinkers, and help you design your systems and structures for success, please reach out to us. You can go to our website at hillforliteracy.org. You can email me at ben@hillforliteracy.org. There's the QR code there that will get you there. And thank you so much for joining us today. Danielle and Terrie, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you.